Hey everybody. So I've waited a week since this extremely dismaying election result to kind of organize my thoughts and reach some conclusions as to what produced it. As my title suggests, I believe that it took an extraordinary amount of failure on the part of a lot of different people to produce this result. And I suppose you can call this vlog Rowan's Revenge. It's my list of all the constituencies and all the people that contributed to Hillary losing election 2016. First of all, my basic premise is a simple one. The Democrats nominated the wrong person. Hillary Clinton was an extremely flawed candidate. She never generated an adequate level of excitement among Democratic partisans. And the lesson that I would draw initially from this election cycle is never nominate somebody for president who is as ethically compromised as Hillary Clinton was in 2016. Never nominate somebody who was under active FBI investigation. Not only was her conduct at the State Department blameworthy, but it also fed the broad narrative pushed by all the people who opposed her that Hillary Clinton is a crook, that she can't be trusted, that she's cynical, and it showed up in the exit polls. So the first group deserving of some blame are my own Democratic compatriots, Barack Obama included, who consistently poo-pooed the significance of the email scandal during the primary season, kept telling me it was trivial, and suggested that I stop focusing on Hillary Clinton's shortcomings in my blogs. That group was wrong about the emails, and they chose the wrong horse to ride during the primaries. Let's look at some of the numbers, first of all. Hillary Clinton lost among white women 53% to 43%. That is, Hillary Clinton, who was running to be the first female president in America's history, could not generate enough enthusiasm among her own cohort to even run even among white women. That fact alone is staggering to me. And even though much has been made about the fact that Hillary Clinton has won the popular vote, last time I checked, it was by about 2 million. She still garnered 7 million fewer votes than Barack Obama did. I mean, that's an indicator of the lack of enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton in this election. I've heard all kinds of explanations about people repudiating the Democratic Party, the Democratic agenda. I heard Obama say today that it was a reaction to globalization. I don't really believe any of those things. I think that this was not an ideological vote. This was a personal rejection of Hillary Clinton. And let me offer another piece of data that suggests that. 54% of voters told the surveyors that they opposed a wall between the U.S. and Mexico. Only 40% of voters supported Donald Trump's wall. 70% of voters told the pollsters that they supported a path to citizenship for undocumented workers. That is, there was no upsurge in favor of mass deportation. None of that showed up in the polls at all. When people were asked, do you think that the fix was in this election? Was the election rigged? 83% of people said, basically, heck no. I think this will be a fair election that'll be counted fairly. None of Donald Trump's signature programs showed up in the exit polls. There was no enthusiasm for his agenda. And to me, that means two things. First of all, it reinforces what I always say, which is that people do not vote on the issues except on the margins. People are not that focused on issues because it makes their heads hurt. Remembering what the pros and cons are of Obamacare, remembering what Donald Trump's position is on NATO or on whether Japan should have nuclear weapons, people don't remember that stuff. What people do is that they vote impressionistically on whether they kind of like this person or whether they feel comfortable with that person. And they did not feel sufficiently comfortable with Hillary Clinton for her to win despite all the negatives that attach to Donald Trump. So I can hear some of you saying to me now, well, what about Jim Comey? Didn't Comey's intrusion into the election really change the outcome? Well, I sort of believe that it did. But I believe that it did only because the result was so razor thin that the slight amount that Jim Comey moved the needle turned out to be significant. Had Hillary been ahead by the amount that I would have expected, Jim Comey's intrusion would not have mattered. But yes, I think that his outrageous conduct in throwing a stink bomb into the election that had no value whatsoever did affect the outcome. Now, the name Jim Comey brings up the next group of people who I think are worthy of blame. First of all, we have Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton is a very sad case because I think it could be said about Bill Clinton that back in the 90s, he was the gold standard as a politician. He had perfect pitch. His ability to influence people, to woo a crowd, to give a speech was unparalleled. Well, the Bill Clinton of 2016 is far from that. Bill Clinton seemed to have no idea when he elbowed his way onto the airplane of Loretta Lynch on that tarmac in Phoenix of the train of events that he would set off that would significantly wound his wife. First of all, he made Loretta Lynch look like a fool, which was important because Loretta Lynch was the person ostensibly who was going to determine whether Hillary would be indicted. So wounding the Attorney General was not helpful. Second of all, that meeting allowed the Republicans to fan the flames and create the narrative that the fix was in, that whatever outcome came, it was predetermined. Bill Clinton's behavior laid the groundwork for that narrative. Second of all, Loretta Lynch, who was made a fool of by Bill Clinton, took things even further with her own bad judgment. When she said that she was going to stand aside and accept the judgment of the FBI, well, that was terrible judgment also. What she should have done is said, I'm going to step aside and turn the investigation over to my Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, and she will make the final judgment on the disposition of this case. By not doing that, she sort of empowered Jim Comey and the FBI to take full ownership of the issue of Hillary Clinton's emails. That emboldened Jim Comey to become a rogue operative, not to mention all the other people in the FBI who were hostile to Hillary Clinton. That's a good move that Loretta Lynch stepped aside after her mistake, but she should have simply let the case fall to her first in command, Sally Yates. She didn't do that, and it became Jim Comey's baby, and the rest was history. So I think Loretta Lynch really flubbed this case also, and she will leave office with her reputation severely tarnished after that sequence of events. Who else do I blame for Hillary losing? Well, let's turn to the African American community. I think the African American community really failed in two fundamental ways in this election. First of all, it was evident to me from the beginning that the black community was not going to give Bernie Sanders the time of day. Out of inertia, the attitude of the black community is, look, we know the Clintons, I know Bill Clinton, I'm familiar with Hillary Clinton. We're not going to give this white guy from some state up in New England a good look. We're going to stick with Hillary come hell or high water. This, despite the fact that Bernie Sanders was protesting housing discrimination in Chicago back when Hillary was still a Goldwater girl. This, despite the fact that Bernie was protesting discriminatory practices at Howard Johnson's back when Hillary was the president of the Young Republicans Club at Wellesley. Now, that was 50 years ago. That doesn't make Hillary a bad person. But it does make Bernie a good person. And he deserved better from the black community. So the black community became Hillary's firewall. Once the primaries moved down to the South, where black voters overwhelmingly constitute the Democratic constituency down there, Bernie Sanders didn't have a chance. Hillary marched through the South like General Sherman. There was no way for Bernie to win. And it was sort of the automatic vote that the black community gave Hillary that gave her the nomination. Now, that's okay. I mean, everybody has a right to pick the candidate that they think is best. The additional problem I have with the black community is if you're going to give Hillary the nomination, at least have the follow-through to show up in the general election. The black community, in large measure, didn't show up. Take the case of Michigan. Donald Trump won Michigan by 13,000 votes. In Wayne County, which houses Detroit, Hillary Clinton won 70,000 fewer votes than Barack Obama did. 70,000 fewer votes. A decent turnout in Detroit would have given her Michigan. In Wisconsin, where Donald Trump won by 27,000 votes, she got 30,000 fewer votes in Milwaukee County alone. 30,000 fewer votes in the urban area of Wisconsin than Barack Obama did. So again, a decent turnout in the urban communities of Wisconsin would have turned the tables there. Black voters did not show up in sufficient numbers to push Hillary over the finish line. Now you say, well, that's understandable. I mean, back in 2012, they were voting for a black president. It makes sense that she would get fewer votes. Really? Are you suggesting to me that the African American community didn't realize the magnitude of this election in terms of voters' rights, in terms of the voter suppression campaigns of the Republicans, in terms of Supreme Court nominees, in terms of economic justice, in terms of criminal justice reform, all of which isn't going to happen from a President Trump? The black community didn't realize the importance of any of those things? I'm shocked, frankly. If you were black and you sat on your hands during this election, shame on you. So let's look at some of the ethnic and demographic data. Barack Obama won 93% of the black vote. Hillary Clinton won 88% of the black vote. It shrunk. That 5% hurts. It hurt in Philadelphia. It hurt in Florida. Barack Obama won 71% of the Hispanic vote. Hillary Clinton won 65%. Despite the fact that Donald Trump had a sustained campaign of hostility toward Mexicans and Latinos in particular. That's an amazing fact. And how about millennials, the 18 to 29-year-old vote? Millennials never bought in to Hillary Clinton. Barack Obama won 60% of millennials. For Hillary Clinton, it was down to 54%. She underperformed Obama in every segment of the population. That's the anatomy of a loss. Who else do I hold responsible for Hillary's loss? How about Bernie Sanders? Now, I can hear what you're saying. I thought you liked Bernie Sanders. Well, I voted for Bernie Sanders. I contributed to his campaign twice. But fundamentally, I thought Bernie Sanders ran a lousy campaign. And he ran a lousy campaign because he was so rigid and so sanctimonious. He never deigned to talk about the fundamental issue of the campaign. That's character. Bernie would say stuff like, I'm not going to talk about the Clinton Foundation. I'm not going to talk about her damn emails. I want to stick to the issues. Bernie, the fundamental fact of every election is character. It's trustworthiness. It's who that person is. And if you're not going to exploit that issue, if you're not going to go for Hillary's weakest point of vulnerability to get the nomination, why am I contributing to your campaign? The purism of Bernie Sanders' campaign cost him the election. The emails were an issue. Now, I don't fault Joe Biden for not running. But you can bet that Joe Biden is kicking himself right now saying, what the hell was I thinking? I don't fault Liz Warren for not running, but I wish we could get over the idea that it's somebody's turn. It was Hillary's turn. She got pushed aside in 2008. So let's give her all the leeway that we can now because it's her turn. It's never anybody's turn. I wish everybody had jumped into the race because even though I voted for Bernie Sanders, I wasn't a Bernie Sanders supporter. I wasn't anybody but Hillary supporter. I would love to have seen Liz Warren run for president. Back in July, between July and September, the Gallup organization started surveying people and asked them basically to give words that they associated with each candidate and kind of a free association. And out of that, the Gallup organization produced a word cloud. And the word clouds, I believe, are very revealing about the perspective and the mood of the electorate. Here were the words that were associated with Hillary Clinton: lie, health, speech, scandal, foundation. And the word most associated with her, email. None of those are good words. How about Donald Trump? And this poll was done before Gropegate occurred. So obviously that might have affected things. But here were Donald Trump's words: speech, Mexico, president, immigration, convention, campaign. Those are pretty neutral words compared to the words associated with Hillary. That's a warning sign right there in September. One very unscientific way of looking at the campaign is what I call the bumper sticker test. I'm from Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., we voted for Hillary Clinton to the tune of 93% to 4%. 4% of Washingtonians voted for Donald Trump, and we're still out looking to see who these people were. But by the same token, if you drive through the Washington, D.C. area, there were no Hillary bumper stickers to be found. That's because it takes a level of enthusiasm to go out and buy a bumper sticker and slap it on your car and know that it's going to be sitting there for the next couple of years. It takes a certain amount of attachment to a candidate to do that it doesn't take to vote for them. I would never have put a Hillary bumper sticker on my car, whereas I was, in line on day one to put Obama stickers on my car. In keeping with that, here's the way Chris Salissa of the Washington Post described Hillary's campaign. The idea of Clinton the candidate never matched the reality of Clinton on the campaign trail. She underwhelmed repeatedly, running a too cautious primary campaign that allowed little-known Bernie Sanders to emerge as exactly what Clinton's campaign had hoped to avoid, a viable liberal challenger. Support for Clinton, even after she won the primary campaign, seemed obligatory rather than excited. The campaign she ran was ruthlessly efficient and organized, but what it never seemed to be was joyful or exuberant. It felt, to put a fine point on it, dutiful. And I would even take this moment to say something positive about Hillary Clinton. I thought that once she won the nomination, she ran a pretty darn good campaign. She won every debate. She was tireless in her campaigning. She put to rest all the vicious rumors that Donald spread about her ill health and fatigue and old age and all that sort of thing. She handled all of his gaffes, I thought, very well, not overplaying them, not underplaying them. She bested him completely in her speech at the Al Smith dinner. She did very well. My problem with Hillary wasn't the quality of her campaigning. It was the fact that Hillary carried so much baggage. Hillary was so overweight with baggage dating back to the 90s that no amount of effort, not from Beyonce, not from Springsteen, not from LeBron James, not from anybody, no amount of effort could push her over the finish line. Now, in the midst of this rant, you might ask, well, do I have any heroes? Did anybody distinguish themselves for principle or integrity or valor in this election? And my answer is, not really. John Kasich? No. Sure, he said he wouldn't vote for Donald Trump, but he was mealy-mouthed about it. Didn't speak out in a timely way, didn't speak out forcefully. He was constantly covering his flank. fearing that Republicans would turn on him. How about John McCain? Constantly talking out of both sides of his mouth. He would offer the occasional criticism of Donald Trump, but then he'd follow it up with, hey, we should block any Supreme Court justice that Hillary nominates. Doesn't matter who they are. That's pretty disgraceful. So at the end of the day, I only have one hero from election cycle 2016, Mitt Romney. I thought that Mitt Romney was a profile of courage. Mitt Romney's speech, in which he detailed not only Donald Trump's shortcomings as a person, but also chronicled his failures as a business person. I thought it was a terrific speech. I thought Mitt Romney had nothing to gain from it except stating the truth. And I thought Mitt coined one of the most apt and appropriate phrases of the election, trickle-down racism, which described how when the man at the top is a bigot and a bully, how it empowers all the people beneath him and emboldens them to act in the same way, a phenomenon that we've been seeing throughout the Trump candidacy. And is there any silver lining in this cloudy picture that I'm painting? Only one that I can think of. And that is that Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to have a devil of a time trying to unwind Obamacare, if that's their real goal. And the reason I say that is because it's very easy to trash Obamacare and to try to sabotage it when you're the out party, because you know that you're going to leave a mess that the other guy has to clean up. The Republicans would have been perfectly happy for Obamacare to fail miserably and leave Barack Obama with a terrible cleanup problem. You can't do that when you're the in party. If you try to unwind Obamacare, you run the risk of creating a mess that you can't control. Furthermore, there are millions of people out there who benefit from Obamacare who don't know that they're benefiting from Obamacare. And once that gets taken away, for the first time, they will appreciate exactly what Obamacare was doing for them. And we may see an outcry, the likes of which nobody predicted. So this could be one of those beware of what you wish for, like the infamous woman who said, keep your goddamn government hands off my Medicare. That may be in the offing for Donald Trump. So my point today is that this failure had 1,000 authors. The Democrats failed in a multitude of ways. The American people failed in a multitude of ways. Hopefully it won't be as catastrophic as I fear, and hopefully it'll produce a rethinking of the nominating process so that neither party in the foreseeable future will ever nominate two people who are the most unpopular candidates in American history. I'm Jeff Rowan. Thanks for watching.